dedicate this reading to Nelson Rodriguez and Bob Everton, and also to Waldo Briño, a comrade in struggle, a Chilean, a friend, who is now literally fighting for his life in the palliative care unit of VGH. This is for Waldo. Also to Salvador Allende and all of those that were murdered and disappeared by the dictatorship.
So I'm Carmen's daughter, also called Carmen. I'm going to read a little bit from my book, Something Fierce, Memoirs of a Revolutionary Daughter. The part that I'm going to read from is actually takes place, the part that I'm reading from is in La Paz, Bolivia in 1979. And it's on the day of another coup, the Natush Bush coup in Bolivia in 1979. So that occurred when I was 12 years old. And when my mother, her partner at the time, Bob Everton, my sister and I were in Bolivia running a safe house for Chilean resistance members who were going in and out of Chile in response to the return plan. The return plan being a call that the Chilean resistance made to exiles all over the world to return to Chile and or its neighboring countries and join the underground to fight against the dictatorship. So this part that I'm going to read, which is on the day of the coup in Bolivia, we are actually hiding two people in the house, two people who were, let's say they were on the most wanted list in Chile at that time. So that's what I'm going to read from. On the morning of the coup in Chile, my mother and father had called Ale and me into their bed. Together, we listened to President Allende say goodbye over the radio as warplanes flew above La Moneda Palace. Compañeros, surely this will be the last opportunity for me to address you. My words do not express bitterness, but disappointment. May there be a moral punishment for those who have betrayed their oath, the soldiers of Chile. The only thing left for me to say is to the workers, I am not going to resign. Placed in a historic transition, I will pay for your loyalty with my life. And I say to you that the seeds we have planted in the good conscience of thousands and thousands of Chileans will not be shriveled forever. Social processes can be arrested by neither crime nor force. History is ours, and people make history. Workers of my country, I want to thank you for the loyalty you always had, the confidence that you deposited in a man who was only an interpreter of great yearnings for justice. At this definitive moment, the last moment when I can address you, I wish you to take advantage of the lesson. Foreign capital, imperialism, together with the reactionary right, created the climate in which the armed forces broke their tradition. I address the youth, those who sang and gave us their joy and their spirit of struggle. I address the worker, the farmer, the intellectual, those who will be persecuted, because in our country, fascism has already been present for many hours. History will judge them. There had been a whistling, then the sound of bombs exploding. My parents, who had joined the student movement in the 60s, had sobbed quietly as they held us. And when we tried to speak, they pressed a finger to their pursed lips and whispered, "Listen, Compañero Allende has something important to say. And no matter what happens to us, you must always remember this moment. And so we sat and listened. I will always be next to you. At least my memory will be that of a man of dignity who was loyal to his country. The people must defend themselves. They must not let themselves be destroyed or riddled with bullets, but they cannot be humiliated either. Workers of my country, I have faith in Chile and its destiny. Other men will overcome this dark and bitter moment when treason seeks to prevail. Go forward knowing that sooner rather than later, the great avenues will open once again, where free men will walk to construct a better society. Viva Chile! Viva el pueblo! Vivan los trabajadores! These are my final words, and I am certain that my sacrifice will not be in vain. I am certain that at the very least it will be a moral lesson that will punish felony, cowardice, and treason. That voice and its message had been burned into my core forever. We listened on that bed in our yellow wooden house in Valdivia, as if we were on a vessel lost at sea. Thank you.
As Carmencita was saying, we came to Canada as a family in 1974, and here we dedicated ourselves to create a solidarity movement towards the resistance, for the resistance movement in Chile. So some of you have already reminded me tonight about the peñas that we used to have at the Russian Hall and the Ukrainian Hall, these huge gatherings where we ate empanadas and we drank wine and we sang and we made speeches and we put everybody up to date on what was happening in Chile at the moment. But then, later on, a few years later, as Carmen was saying, we were invited, we were urged, and we were honored to be asked to go to Bolivia and support the resistance in a more direct way, which we did. This is part of a couple of pages from my novel, in which the protagonist, Sol Martinez, goes back to Chile from Canada because the remains of her disappeared husband, it appears that they have been found. So she goes to look for the remains, Miguel's remains. And in a way, it brings us back to the time of past dictatorship, and to the time when there is already limited democracy in Chile as there is now. So it will bring us more to the present, and then we can open up the discussion about what's going on in Chile today as well. So this is Sol waking up in Santiago after a long, long time. Cars honk, bells ring, dogs bark, children sing. Voices offer their hellos, their goodbyes. I open my eyes and find myself in the semi-darkness of a bedroom. It takes me a moment to remember that I'm in the city of love, the city of terror. I jump out of bed and open the window. Santiago pours in like the haunting song of a mermaid. I cannot help but surrender to her appeal. How to resist the dry and warm air of this summer morning, the height of the snow-capped Andes, the aroma of the blooming honeysuckle, the luminous purple of the jacarandas. Santiago is beautiful. In my daily walks, I've been rediscovering the city's treasures: centenary buildings with red tile roofs, thick adobe walls, and interior courtyards where a grapevine twines itself around a wooden arbor. Cobblestone streets bordered by gigantic ceibo trees. Old plazas where dark-skinned children with huge rosy cheeks play ronda or swing to and fro, accompanied by giggles and squeaks. So many forgotten sounds. When I came back clandestinely in 1986, Santiago was still a whispering city, its hushed din punctured by sporadic street demonstrations against the dictatorship. Today, it has recovered its tongue. My ears have been savoring the sing-song of Chilean Spanish, its quick tempo. I haven't hesitated to follow suit, and now I can hear myself speak in my most Chilean of voices to the person sitting next to me on the bus or admiring shoes in the Falabella store window on Ahumada Street. I catch myself complimenting conversations with that peculiar fluttering of hands and eyelashes, that propensity to laughter, that wanting to talk to everybody about everything all at once. In Canada, I have a foreign accent. Here, I have an accent, but it's just like everybody else's. My daughter is far away. Vancouver is far away. Commercial Drive, that's my neighborhood, the one I've come to love, I tell myself. But my body doesn't respond. What my body wants is to submerge itself in this Chileanness. It wants to eat its fill of ayuyas, avocados, lucuma ice cream, corn casserole, cazuela, cheese-filled empanadas, juicy chirimoyas, and watermelon. Manjar, the flavors and aromas of my childhood and youth. My body wants to convince me that I haven't changed and that the country hasn't changed. But it has changed, and I have changed. Every time I get on the modern and impeccably clean subway train, terror lodges in my throat once again as I wonder, how many of these men and women were informers, torturers, collaborators? How many made false accusations in order to save their own skin? How many covered their ears and eyes so as not to hear, not to see? How many would support the persecution and the massacre once again? But then, as I look around and attempt to see through those inscrutable faces, I also ask myself, how many of these men and women had their dreams and part of their lives amputated on September 11, 1973? How many participated in the resistance movement to the dictatorship? Who is who? So that brings us to kind of the present time, to a Chile in 2013, 40 years after the military coup, and in the middle of a campaign for an election, which is to happen in November. A Chile that is obviously completely different from the one we left in 1973, and also in many ways different from the Chile of the dictatorship, but unfortunately also in many ways very, very similar.